background?
Well, let me make one other point adjacent to this, which is every single person.
Can you answer that question just really clearly? Would you support people having to give 5 years of
Hey guys, I'm Mike, and in this video, we're taking a look at a clip where a US official discusses free speech issues in the UK and is challenged by a journalist who comes prepared with pointed questions. The exchange highlights how these conversations can shift once accountability enters the picture. Before we get into it, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's dive into the clip.
We have a special relationship with Britain for a reason. We don't share these roots and values with Russia or China, but that is why some of these cases are...
Don't you though? Because that national security document seemed to suggest that perhaps America now does. I mean, it's very sympathetic to Russia.
I can't find a single page of that strategy, and I'd be delighted if a Brit could show me one in which we claim that we have more in common with Russia than we do with Western Europe. Certainly on the
I think the thing that really concerned, a lot of people in reading that document was the way that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine was represented, and the way that Europe was represented in those passages, and the way that it appeared that America was suggesting that conflict was because of antagonism on the Ukrainian side and not because of Russia launching an illegal war.
What you're seeing with respect to the Ukraine conflict is what you're seeing with respect to our security posture internationally, which is a strategy of pragmatic realism. So this is less about moralizing and placing blame and more about brokering peace, which this president has demonstrated a real commitment to.
Okay. But you don't blame Russia. You don't blame Russia.
Katie, I'm here today to talk about free speech in Britain and about the civilizational values that we share.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
I mean, we can get back to
negotiations.
That's fine. We can get back to talking about that. I mean, you raised the issue of Russia, but I suppose my question is the same. You know, do you think freedom of speech means that people should have the right to say whatever they want in person and online? Is that the definition in your view?
So I think the definition of free speech, and this traces back to Athens and the concept of parrhesia, we should strive for a society where fearless debate and particularly fearless deliberation on issues of public concern is possible. And that's because unlike Russia, my country and your country are democracies. We prize self-governance. And so if you and I are going to the polls and we're going to make decisions on issues like war or peace or grooming gangs, for example, we need to have access to all that information and be able to debate it with people in our country. And I'd just like to review some of these cases, if you'd allow me, that have caused concern recently. So British police dragged a woman out of the bath naked for privately referring in a private text message to someone who'd assaulted her using homophobic language. That happened in Britain. Britain handed down a prison sentence to a footballer for calling somebody a bike nonce, I believe. And I don't know quite how bad that term is in Britain. I think it means something like pedophile. There's a pedophile named Peter Selby who was recently given 0 prison time. That's less prison time than Lucy Connolly, for being found with 125,000 explicit pornographic images of children, including images involving violence and animals. The reason he was spared prison by British courts is that he identifies as a trans woman, but who was not spared prison was Lucy Connolly, a child carer, who posted and then deleted a mean tweet about migrants after the Southport incident.
She pled guilty, that's why.
Well, but guilty of what? Guilty of a mean tweet. I mean,
she pled guilty. That was the plea she entered. There's an example, a very live example right now in this country. The police in Manchester and London have said that today they will arrest protesters who, in public, in these protests that are going on as they are in your country. Anybody who chants globalise the intifada will be arrested. Do you agree with that?
So I haven't reviewed that exact statement, but that's legal to shout in America, and I firmly disagree with that sentiment. I come from New York City. I don't want an intifada in New York City, but I think robust political debate has to be allowed. And Katie, when you ask if you should be able to say anything, I think it comes down to anything at any time to anyone in any context. Eventually you shade into sort of real-time imminent incitement of lawless action, and then police can and should act. So if you're pointing at someone in a crowd saying commit an intifada against that guy, he's right there, then you have, imminent specter of criminal violence and no.
But what if you're just saying it? What if it, as is the case here in most of these contexts, it's a group of people who are chanting that in the context of what they would say is about resistance? That's what they would say that terminology means. Now, many Jewish people feel that it's anti-Semitic. Do you think that turn of phrase is acceptable, or should people be arrested for using it?
I think it's totally socially and morally unacceptable. And I don't think you or I should be arrested for using it on this radio show. And I think whether you should be arrested for using particular words really comes down to, and this is a matter of American law that we urge other countries to consider a similar approach to, comes down to context and whether you're actually inciting violence. So when you and I uttered the phrase globalize the intifada on the show, we were not inciting violence, and I would not want either of us to be arrested. I'm here on American soil, so I won't be, and I hope that you'll be okay.
So I'm still a bit unclear, though. In the context of a protest, a group of people who are very, very anti-Israel, would that pass the muster for you? Would that be acceptable?
So I think an anti-Israel viewpoint, we don't arrest people based on their viewpoint. It really depends, again, on time, place, space, and whether there's imminent incitement of actual violence or a true threat of violence. I can tell you a case in Britain that is a little more proximate to this one than when you guys gave the footballer a jail sentence for saying nonce. A case that reminds me a little more of your hypothetical is the case of the activist who burned the Quran and in front of a crowd and then was stabbed by an Islamic radical, and the guy who burned the Quran was charged with inciting violence against himself. So in America, we would say, we wouldn't blame you for inciting violence against yourself. And I think that's a situation where you have kind of a tinderbox, you have a protest, but the provocative speech is legal because burning the Quran is not an imminent threat. You're not raising a knife and saying, watch her, I'm going to come get you. And you're not saying, go get that guy. You're just making a provocative statement. I think that kind of situation ends with violence, but it's legal.
Okay. And there are people who disagree with you. And that case has been tested, through the media in this country repeatedly. But I'm really interested in something you just said, which is about, inciting immediate violence in that context. Because what I'm struggling to understand is if that's the threshold, what's the justification for America asking for my social media accounts, anybody's social media accounts coming into America, 5 years of my social media history? What's the justification for that?
So right now, America doesn't ask for that. There's a proposal for notice and comment that another agency has made, which is in our regulatory system, you propose something and then the public can come back and it may or may not become law. What that proposal is the existing visa application form that people fill out when they come to the United States, and this was long before the Trump administration, long before the Biden administration, it is a very deep background check. It asks, what are all the names you've ever used? Who have you ever been married to? Where have you ever lived? And it asks about ideology. It asks, are you a communist? Are you a terrorist? If you were filling out a job application that was that deep and broad in this day and age, you would probably expect it to also ask, what's your Twitter handle that you've used over the past 5 years?
What do you want my social media for?
Well, so if as part of the visa process, a background check is being performed, nobody performs a background check in 2025 without at least asking about social media. If we're asking for...
But aren't you policing my language? Because that's not a conviction. You're policing my use of language. That's the same thing that you're saying you're against.
Well, the visa form already asks about your language and your ideology. It already asks if you support Al-Qaeda, for example. So this is basically, have you supported Al-Qaeda on Twitter? But Katie, again, America isn't asking for this because this isn't current American law. And I want to make one other point.
So you wouldn't support it, just out of interest, you wouldn't support people being forced to give 5 years of social media background?
Well, let me make one other point adjacent to this, which is every single person.
Can you answer that question just really clearly? Would you support people having to give 5 years of
I would need to see the final form of the regulation, and I haven't seen it.
Okay.
And I'm a lawyer, so I'm very particular about this stuff. But I want to say something to clarify this because this comes up often in the free speech debate. So every single person on American soil, whether you're a tourist, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're an illegal immigrant, you have the same rights under the First Amendment. So you're not going to be sent to jail for saying bike nonce, for example. But neither the First Amendment nor any other amendment gives foreign nationals the right to be an invited guest in the United States. So what this administration and other administrations, by the way, have done is said, look, when you're here, you have the right to free speech, but if we're issuing you a visa, an invitation to come, we're going to at least consider whether you despise the country.
It might not be that free. Can I ask you finally, Susie Wiles has done a really extensive interview with Vanity Fair, and her comments have caused quite a lot of controversy. She says she's been misrepresented. Do you think it was wise to do an interview like that and to give, such an in-depth interview, which has caused a lot of controversy at a time, glossy photo shoot, at a time when lots of Americans are really concerned about the cost of living? Do you think that was a good move?
Well, Katie, as you can see, I myself am perfectly willing to do all kinds of interviews at all kinds of times, including this one. I've I haven't really had a chance to read the full interview, but we have a lot of experience in the United States with members of this administration having their remarks taken out of context by adversarial journalists. And the benefit of free speech is that people can read that article and they can read Susie Wiles' response and can decide for themselves.
So what do you think after watching that exchange? To me, this was a clear example of how quickly confidence can unravel when someone isn't prepared to defend their position under scrutiny. The official entered the conversation projecting certainty and authority, clearly expecting to frame the issue as a one-sided lecture about free speech and democratic values. But once the journalist shifted the focus to concrete policies and real-world actions taken by her own government, the dynamic changed almost immediately. What made this moment stand out wasn't raised voices or theatrics. It was the contrast between rhetoric and reality. When the journalist pointed out how the U.S. has pressured platforms or requested access to social media information in certain contexts, it cut straight to the heart of the argument. Suddenly, the abstract defense of free speech collided with examples that complicated that narrative. And instead of a clear rebuttal, we saw hesitation, deflection, and an attempt to redirect the conversation away from specifics. That pause mattered. In political interviews, silence and evasiveness often speak louder than direct admissions. It signaled that the talking points didn't fully account for the contradictions being exposed. Accountability is uncomfortable, especially when the same standards being preached abroad aren't applied consistently at home. The journalist didn't need to editorialize or attack personally. Simply holding up the record and asking for an explanation was enough to reveal the tension. Moments like this are useful because they show why journalism still matters, not as partisan combat, but as a tool for testing claims against facts. Whether you agree with the official's broader views or not, this exchange demonstrates how credibility is earned or lost in real time. When arguments rely on moral framing without acknowledging trade-offs or inconsistencies, they tend to collapse under even basic follow-up questions. So I'm curious, what stood out to you most in this clip? Was it the question itself, the lack of a clear response, or the way the conversation shifted once specifics were introduced? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'm Mike, and I'll see you in the next video.